some vintage AHI goodness. Now, as y'all know, I'm a big fan of the AHI monsters, as a lot of monster kids are, especially if you grew up in the 70s. I never had these in the 70s, but have acquired them later in life. And when the monster craze started up again in the 60s and 70s, of course, they brought back Frankenstein and Dracula and the Wolfman and the Mummy. The Mummy they went for, like I stated earlier, was the Lon Chaney Jr. version of the Mummy from the latter films. But what they added to it, as you can see here from these figures alone, is the picture over there on the Famous Monsters magazine. You've got the Mummy with the closed eye. But everything from the Aurora kits to puzzles to other action figures of the Mummy would do this look of him. And obviously it's because they based these off the Aurora kits, isn't it? That the AHIs are based off the Aurora kit. With the Mummy has this little bit of blood coming from his eye. And it was the same thing with like the Maniac iron-ons, the iron-on shirts. The Mummy would, suddenly the Mummy was very bloody. He had blood all over his bandages, blood dripping from his eye. And there was never really any explanation. Is the Mummy bleeding? Did somebody think when they made these things, well, he's wrapped in bandages, he must be some sort of, maybe he's injured and he's bleeding, so we'll put some blood seepage there. Or is it along the lines of that the Mummy has killed one of his victims and that's the blood of his victims all over his bandages, which is kind of creepy. He's crushed somebody's skull and the blood just caught him right in the eye or all over his bandages. So let's take a look at some of these guys here. We've got this cool guy. And the cool thing about it is, as cheap as they are, and again, like I said, I own more, next to AHI Frankenstein, the Mummy is the one I own the most after that. And then Dracula and then the Wolfman. They did this great thing with the eyes, with the paint jobs. And again, like everyone's different like a snowflake, right? I mean, look at the sculpt on that. These are all soft head ones. They're not hard head ones. But a great, really fantastic job they did on that, considering how cheap these toys were. And the bandages, I don't mind that they're dirty because it gives it more of the moldering of the grave. This is a flesh-colored, flesh body variant. Soft head. And he's got the bare feet. Great wrapping job. I mean, it's really tight. You got to be careful with these. I just use them for display. I don't play with them, obviously. All right, maybe I do. Maybe I have mummy armies and mummy wars. But anyhow, very cool. Look at the blood splatters on that. He's a cool one. And then you've got these two guys here, which is kind of interesting. In some of the Mummy figures, for some reason, the Mummy is wearing these sort of white orthopedic shoes. Or like nurses' loafers, I do a lot of walking. I need comfortable shoes. And look at that look right there. That is awesome. Very cool sculpt. And again, you've got they wrote this like sort of blue paint. You can see a little blood coming out of his eye, not so much. He's got blood splatter there. But he's got his comfortable walking shoes. A little blood here. And again, this is a flesh-colored variant, flesh body variant. And then I've got the colored body variant here, which is the body is all yellow, as is the moldering. And he's got his comfortable shoes as well. And this one's really great paint job. He's got red lips like he took a bite out of somebody. And he's got the blood coming out of his eye. That one, this is probably my favorite one that I've got. And then I've got this poor fella here, who he's got a great sculpt as well. Bloody eye, blue brow. He's a colored body variant. He's got a shoe and he's got blood on his hands even, which indicates that he did kill somebody. But his leg came off. And I bought him like that. That's how it was sold. Here's his leg. And here is his foot. If anybody has any recommendations on how to repair this, I'm gonna maybe have to try some type of mummy resurrection of myself. And now, that's the AHI mummies. Coming up next, we are going to unbox a recent acquisition. This is a recent acquisition from eBay, and we are going to see what is inside. Can you guess? It's like we are archaeologists ourselves. How exciting is this? Watching a middle-aged man struggle to open a cardboard box. These things are hits, aren't they? These unboxing videos. Oh, we got a note. Thanks and enjoy. Always cool to get that little personal bit there. And let's see what's inside. Wrapped very well. Wrapped in tissue paper. Oh. Like a Russian doll. That's good. Means he's going to be in good condition. And what do we have? What is it going to be, ladies and gentlemen? It is a glorious AHI Mummy. Now you're seeing him for the first time just like I am. Except for when I saw him on eBay and bit away at him. And then I've had this box down in my basement for over a week now. I had to sneak it inside so my wife wouldn't see it. And then I stealthily add him to the shelf. And my wife goes, "Didn't you used to just have one mummy? Now you've got like 800. I've always had these. They were just in a box." The sweat begins to drip from my brow. Anyway, look at this guy. Great paint job. Great condition. Let's see, is his head? Oh, he's a soft head. But he's a colored body variant. Great wrap job. Got the sensible shoes. Bloody hand. He looks a lot like the one that was broken there, with the broken leg as for the bloody hand. But look at that. That's fantastic. So, my latest acquisition, another AHI Mummy. And that makes 5. Awesome. So as you can see, this boy is crazy about his mummies. Pause for laughter. Let laughter subside. Pause for thunderous applause. So, again, these are my favorite versions of the Mummy. And I really recommend you do check out some of the Lon Chaney Jr. versions of the Mummy, the latter pictures. I mean, they follow a linear story in the crazy universal fashion. They go from Egypt to New England, and then they wind up in Louisiana, which is insane. But the two of the ones that are really interesting and have some great scenes in them are The Mummy's Ghost and The Mummy's Curse, the last two. And in that, Karras comes across his princess, and the woman playing the princess begins to actually, her hair starts to turn gray, and as he's carrying her off into the swamp at the end, as the villagers are chasing them, she turns into this sort of shriveled up, desiccated corpse, like a mummy, and then they sink into the mud together. Then they cut to the next picture, and suddenly the swamp, they walked into a swamp in New England, Massachusetts, and they wind up in a swamp in Louisiana. But that was Universal's logic back at the time. And when the great scene in that last one, The Mummy's Curse, is the resurrection of the princess mummy. There's two mummies in the film. There's her and there's the Karis mummy. And the one that plays the princess mummy I'm calling her the princess mummy, I believe it's Anaxu-Raman. The one that's resurrected in the last film is played by Virginia Christine, who later on in life wound up being Mrs. Olsen on the Folgers coffee commercials. But that resurrection scene of her coming back to life as the mummy out of the clay of the swamp is really creepy looking. And, she comes up out of the earth, her hand comes up and she unburies herself and walks off. Like I said, there's some really eerie scenes in these mummy movies. A lot of people give them crap, but they are pretty interesting at the time. And honestly, like I said, there's a very Lovecraftian feel to what they were doing then. And that wouldn't be out of the realm of possibilities because, Lovecraft was very popular in the pulps back then, that some of the writers of these films wouldn't have taken that. You've got the priests and the temples and Karis. And Karis is, I don't know why they made Lon Chaney Jr. play him other than they wanted to play off his name. And he hated playing the mummy, so much so that Jack Pierce had to create a mask for him to wear rather than putting the makeup on his face every day. And that being said, Lon Chaney gives it all he can give in it. And he does, he's only got one eye that he can emote through in the mask. And he does a good job of it in some of them. And honestly, I think that the character of Karis is sort of a precursor to the slashers of the modern era films, like Michael Myers and Jason, that he is this unstoppable force that is going to come for you and nothing you can do will stop him or kill him, and he is going to get you and he is going to kill you.
Me and my mommy and me and my mommy and me and my mommy and me. Me and my mommy and me and my mommy and me and my mommy and me.
I saw the face of the mummy last night. I fell in love with this hideous sight. How could it happen? How could it be? It's just me and my mommy and me. It happened in Egypt by the old river Nile, at the base of a pyramid. She gave me a smile. Her bandage unraveled, decayed flesh I did see. Now it's me and my mommy.
He put up a terrific battle, ma'am, but clean living prevailed.